Hey students, today I want to talk to you about the Schlieffen Plan. This here is Alfred von Schlieffen. He is the guy in charge of designing Germany's Great War Plan to essentially win them the war by Christmas. Now let's have a look at the map of Europe in 1914. You can see in the middle there are the Central Powers of the Triple Alliance, Germany and Austria-Hungary here, and you have Russia here in the east, and then you have France here in the west. Now, when Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia in July of 1914, Russia declares war on Austria-Hungary. And that's a problem because Austria-Hungary's ally is Germany. Now, Germany had designed a Schlieffen Plan to take on Russia and France at the same time. Germany knew that France was allied with Russia, and it also knew that Russia would take up towards 100 days to mobilize all of its troops ready to fight the Germans and the Austrians, because Russia is so vast and its railways are so poor, so it would take a long time to organize itself. Therefore, it had a window to attack France in the west by itself. And so the Germans accounted for around 36 to 40 days in order to knock out France. And by that time, France was knocked out in that period, and they could pull their armies over to the east here and then take on the Russians in the east and defeat Russia also. That was the great war plan idea by Alfred von Schlieffen. Let's have a look at our original plan here. Okay, so here's the plan, the original plan in 1905. You can see there are some big thrusts coming through Belgium and also the Netherlands up here. And they're designed to swing around, capture these French channel ports here, which would mean that if England came into the war, then they would not be able to land in France, and also swing around behind Paris, take Paris, okay, so take the government, and then the French army would likely to be in retreat because it would be pushed into the middle here and then rounded up in the middle. Okay, so the whole idea of the plan was to hold the French army here and then swing round behind them and encircle them and defeat them in around 6 weeks. That is the plan. Okay, let's talk about the plan in a little bit more detail. Let's talk about geography first. Okay, so you'll notice on this map the geography of France and Germany and Belgium. Now this little key here shows us the elevation. Okay, so look at this area here. Look how high this area is. Okay, how many rivers there are in here. Let's look at the Ardennes forest in here. Really, really dense forest. Really hard to navigate with a large army. Okay, so that's another big obstacle here. Down here is the Argonne forest, another dense forest. And down here you have the Vosges Mountains, okay, a really high mountain range. So Schlieffen realized that any attack main thrust coming through here on this left wing, if you will, would be slow and cumbersome, because you have to try and get a large army of upwards of 1,000,000 men and their artillery and all their supplies and equipment all the way through these mountains and forests and rivers. Okay, and that would take a long time. That would also mean the French would be ready to meet them at their forts here. You can see Verdun, a large contingent of French forces here. Verdun, that's a French fort area. Okay, another 2 forts here as well. So the French have defences already set on their borders, and the bulk of their army will be ready to meet the Germans here on their border. In addition to that, the French lost this territory here, Alsace and Lorraine, at the end of the Franco-Prussian War. Now the French will want them back, and so what they will do at the start of this war is they will seek to take that back straight away. and reincorporated into France. So the Germans know that the French will be strong along their border here. The Germans also know that the Belgians do not want the French um, encroaching on their territory. Okay, that's also important. So the French are largely going to stick to their border area here. That's where they see the main threat for the Germans coming. Here's France, here's Germany. If you look up here, you'll notice Belgium is largely flat. Okay, there are no great mountains. There are some rivers here, but these are largely small rivers. This is called the Low Countries up here. Okay, so an advance through here, through this flat, open terrain, would potentially be very, very quick, and it could happen a lot quicker than through these mountainous areas and river areas down here. So Schlieffen designed that plan with that taken into consideration. So let's look up here again. You'll see the bulk of the thrust of the German army comes through these low countries here, through Netherlands and through Belgium, and around down here. Okay, now that is really, really important. Okay, all right. Now, the Schlieffen Plan though contains one major danger, and that is Belgium. In 1839, Britain had signed a treaty with Belgium called the Treaty of London, which guaranteed Belgium neutrality. If Germany were to invade Belgium, or if France were to invade Belgium, England would come to its rescue and defend Belgium. Okay? So when the Germans pile up on the Belgian border here and they pour into Belgium, England has no option but to honour its treaty with Belgium, and it comes into the war also. And that is really significant. Okay? Now, Schlieffen retires in 1906. And he retires, and this guy here takes over. His name is von Moltke. Okay? Now, von Moltke can see Schlieffen's plan is quite good, but he thinks that it needs some modifications. Okay, so let's go back to our plan up here. He sees this thrust through the Netherlands or through Holland as too risky. Okay, he doesn't want to declare war on the Netherlands as well as Belgium, as well as Luxembourg, as well as France, potentially as well as England, and as well as Russia. That's just too many countries to take on at the same time. And so instead, he decides, let's delete that thrust through the Netherlands and just have it going through Belgium here. That leaves the Netherlands neutral, which means that we can trade with her when war does come. Okay, so that's the first change that he makes to the plan. In so doing, he reduces the amount of troops on this right wing here, this first and second army. He takes troops away from that main thrust and puts them into the center here. I guess Moltke also recognized that the French are going to want to thrust through this center here in Plan 17, and so he wanted to strengthen that there. But that detracts significantly from this main thrust, and it's that main thrust which is going to win them the battle here. So that's really important. Okay, in hindsight, that was not a very good idea. Okay, all right. The second problem is this place here called Aachen. Okay, a little city just on the Belgian border. Now let me show you this in a bit more detail down here. Okay, now Aachen on this map is around here. Okay, now in order for all the German troops to mobilize and get ready for their advance into Belgium, they have to get to Aachen, and all the trains meet at Aachen. Aachen is like this central station of Western Germany. All the trains marshal there, and we have 840,000 troops and their equipment and supplies and their guns all congregated at Aachen, and that just creates a massive logjam. You can see here the effect of that logjam. Okay, these troops have to congregate up here, swing down, and come through this little kind of gap into Belgium. All right, which slows down their advance. That is significant. Okay, so in 130 k's between the Netherlands and Luxembourg, 840,000 troops have to come up through here, and they're piled up. Okay, that's really significant. Now, that's another problem to the advance. Secondly, okay, once the advance gets going, okay, the Germans predicted that Belgium would not offer any to no resistance. Okay, um, the Belgium army in 1914 was only around 50,000 strong. It was really small, and we've got 840,000 troops coming at it. So you would think, by logic, the Belgians would just say, no, that's not possible for us to do anything. Let's just give up and just surrender. Okay, but they don't. They fight really, really stoically. Um, and they hold the Germans up here at this fortress town called Liege. They hold them up for at least 5 days here. The Germans just cannot penetrate these forts, and these forts have machine guns and rifles and artillery, and they give hell to the German army. So the Germans have to wait until they can bring up large enough artillery to knock out these forts at Liege and then later at Namur as well. Okay, and then only then can they force their way through Belgium. And as they're going through Belgium, the Belgians still offer more and more resistance. They have these hit and run tactics, these partisan campaigns, and they start shooting up the German supply lines, and the Germans are not having any of this. Nine, not at all. Okay. And so they round up entire villages of the Belgians where these actions have taken place, and they murder, execute, massacre, um, you know, stacks of German men responsible for this. All right. And the world sees this, and Britain makes a big deal about this. Look what Germany is doing to these innocent Belgians. They're murdering civilians. And so, straight away, the world has turned off Germany's cause, and Germany is made out to be the bad guy in all of this. Okay. Now, this this slowdown at Liege here is compounded because the British have time to come onto the continent here, and they end up meeting the German army at a place called Mons here. Okay, now they only hold up the Germans for around a day, but that day is significant. Okay, that day really matters, and it has a big effect on the German advance again. Okay, so that's also important. All right, let's keep going. Um, as the Germans move into France, the French army, remember, it's largely down here. It's largely down this area here. Okay, that's the bulk of the French army. Now there is one army over here, their Fifth Army, and that's about it. So this Fifth Army here, this guy's name is Lanzerac. He's the commander of the French army, and he can see the issues happening. Okay, above him, the Germans are sweeping around behind him, and he is powerless to do anything about that. Okay, so he says and he pleads to his commander. His commander's name is Joseph Joffre, this guy here. He says to him, "We are in grave danger. If we don't do something, then we're going to be surrounded by the Germans." And Joffre, he wanted to stick to Plan 17, and that meant, I'll draw that in blue for you. That meant pushing through this center here all the way into Germany. Okay, because Plan 17 theorized that yes, the Germans are probably pretty strong up here, and they're probably pretty strong down here, but there has to be a weakness to them. Okay, they can't be strong everywhere, and so it theorized that the hinge, this center bit down here, would be fairly weak, and so Joffre thrust the bulk of his armies through this area here. But French bodies and flesh was no match for German artillery and machine guns. Okay, so as a result of what the Germans are doing here, the French start to pull back. Okay, they pull back here, and they congregate around with the British down here at the River Marne. Okay, they fall all the way back. The Germans at this time are also saying to the commanders, to Moltke, the commanders of these armies here, they're reporting back saying, look, the French are on the run. The French are being defeated. The French army is in disarray. The war is won in France on the Western Front. We've done it. Okay, we just have to simply round them up and circle them, and they will surrender. And so Moltke is hearing all these fantastic things. And so halfway through the campaign, he takes 100,000 troops up here from the First Army, remember the main thrust, and he sends them over to the east, to Russia, okay? Because Russia has surprised everyone, and they have mobilized fairly quickly, and they're threatening East Germany, okay? So Moltke weakens that right wing. He sends 100,000 over. In addition to that, at Antwerp, the Belgian army falls back on this area here, and they're not defeated. And so the Germans have to leave additional troops here, protecting anti-Belgian resistance from Antwerp. And so this thrust is further weakened. Okay. Now, let me erase that for you. Okay. Now, one last thing. The French have pulled all their forces all the way back here. Okay. They've also pulled forces from down here all the way around, and they've made a new army in Paris called the Sixth Army. Okay. Sixth Army. Now, that army is not only made up of men from this army down here, but it also has reserves throughout France. Called up everyone, please get to France as quickly as possible. Joffre organizes all the French taxis to pick up these guys and dump them in France. Okay. Once the Germans get down here, you'll notice the First Army does this kind of swing around, and that's because the Sixth Army meets it up here. Okay. And so it outflanks this German army, and so they have to turn around and come back and meet this threat. If they don't, this Sixth Army will swing around and encircle the Germans. The hunter will become the hunted essentially. All right. Now, the French and British are pulled back here. They've decided enough is enough. We're going to stand and fight, and so they do. And so they fight here, and they're able to push the Germans back. Okay, to this area here, to the River Aisne, okay, which is, you know, a significant distance away from where they got. The Aisne is significant. It's a river area, but it's also a high area. So the Germans pull back, and they're very smart when they pull back. They pull back to this highland area, and they start digging in. And so when the French and British try and come and overrun them and defeat them, they can't because they have to fight uphill. The Germans are entrenched, which makes it even tougher for them. Okay, so this really is how the war goes from August to September 1914. Now, the biggest thing to note out of all this that you have to know is that the Schlieffen Plan fails. Okay, there is no knockout blow for the Germans in France. Plan 17 fails. There is no knockout blow for the French in France. This means that the war will settle into a war of attrition. Okay, The Germans are not equipped for a war of attrition. Attrition is a slow war. It's a war where you'll have to try and wear down the enemy before they wear you down. Okay. Once again, if you think about a football game, um, that last 10 minutes of the game where everyone is running low on energy, um, who has the ability to score that last try to overcome their opponent? This is the war of attrition. Now, Germany, remember, is encircled by Britain and France. Sorry, France and Russia. Okay. Once Britain enters the war, it'll blockade this area up here in the North Sea, making any supplies that Germany needs almost impossible to get through. So it really is on borrowed time here, and its allies, Austria-Hungary and later Bulgaria and Turkey, they are not great allies. They are themselves very weak and almost falling apart before the war. So Germany will have to continue to prop up these countries as well as fight Russia, France, Belgium, later Italy, Serbia, Portugal, Britain, and Australia, and all the other colonies here. I have to do that by itself. And look, it nearly wins in the end. 1918, Germany comes so close to defeating France. It's crazy. The Germans fight stoically, but against them is the combined economic might of all these countries, and later, in addition to that, will be America. Okay, so that is the Schlieffen Plan. That is Plan 17, and that is how they fail.